Hi everyone, Hungry Reader here. I've been looking forward to this video for a long time, and I'm sure a lot of my fans have too, because anytime that you have an array of things to choose from, you have to have a favorite, right? Well, we've come to my favorite. This is probably the Oz book that I've read the most times. You know why? It's simple. It's because it was my first. I ordered this book in 3rd grade from the Troll Book Club, and here it is. Look at this piece of crap. Cheap binding, pulp paper, no illustrations. An Oz book without illustrations. And yet this little quick public domain cash-in captured my heart and I read it over and over again. How ironic that my first Oz book and the one that got me into Oz for life would be the last Oz book. By this point in time, L. Frank Baum was starting to have trouble selling things that didn't have the Oz name on them. His only recourse, as far as he knew, was to end the series entirely. But he sure sent it out on a bang. No. A bang! The other thing that makes the Emerald City of Oz so special to me is that, unlike most Oz books, it actually takes place in Oz. It's actually pretty interesting to count it up at this point. The Wizard of Oz and the Marvelous Land of Oz both took place in Oz, as you would guess from the title. But then there's Ozma of Oz, Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, and The Road to Oz, all of which take place on the way to Oz. I think of them as a sort of Road to Oz trilogy. But the Emerald City of Oz, perhaps in the belief that he wouldn't get to show any more of Oz, is more than half a huge travelogue of all the crazy things that you'll get to see when you visit Oz. It's like taking a vacation to Oz yourself. So let's do it. Here's The Emerald City of Oz. The Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. Illustrated by John R. Neal. Specially illustrated and read by the Hungry Reader. The Nome King was in an angry mood, and at such times he was very disagreeable. Everyone kept away from him, even his chief steward, Calico. Oh yeah, that's the other big special thing. Finally, a return villain. We get to see the Nome King come back. Fetch my pipe.
Your pipe is already here, Your Majesty.
Then get my tobacco.
The tobacco is in your pipe, Your Majesty.
Then bring a live coal from the furnace.
The tobacco is lighted, and Your Majesty is already smoking your pipe.
Why, so I am. But you're very rude to remind me of it.
I am a low-born, miserable villain.
Now, the Nome King has never gotten over his humiliating defeat at the hands of Ozma and Dorothy in the last time we saw him. So, in this story, he is fuming, puffing back and forth, at a loss for words because he is just so angry, and it's all coming to a head. The Nome King puts together his plan to get his magic belt back. Well, not so much puts together a plan, so much as orders other people to put together a plan, and punishes them when they don't. Now, while the Nome King is raging against people who've almost forgotten he exists, Dorothy has her own troubles. Look at what Dorothy's been through over the last 5 books. Her house was actually carried away by a tornado. They had to build a new one. That cost money. Uncle Henry was ordered by the doctors to visit Australia for his health. That costs money. Uncle Henry is out of dough.
We must give up the farm, my dear, and wander away into the world to work for our living.
We don't mind for ourselves, but we're heartbroken to think that you must also endure poverty. Wouldn't it be funny for me to do housework in Kansas when I'm a princess in the land of Oz?
Now, Dorothy has never actually kept Oz a secret, but her aunt and uncle were always kind of, oh, that's nice, honey. But there's no way of hiding it now, and just to prove that she wasn't kidding, she goes up to her room and disappears. Of course, Dorothy goes to take counsel with her best friend, the ruler of the land of Oz.
Well, I'd like to live here in the land of Oz where you've often invited me to live, but I can't, you know. Unless Uncle Henry and Aunt Em could live here, too.
Of course they could. You really think Ozma would say no? And the very next day, right after breakfast, in the middle of the chores they were doing, Aunt Em and Uncle Henry find themselves in the royal throne room of the Emerald City.
How the world did we ever get here so quick? Is it all real?
Why didn't you tell us what you were going to do? If I'd known about it, I'd have put on my Sunday clothes.
You won't have anything to do now but look pretty, Aunt Em, and Uncle Henry won't have to work till his back aches. Sure? Of course I'm sure. You're in the fairyland of Oz now, and what's more, you belong to it.
Now this seems like a happy ending right here, and we're only a couple chapters in. But there's still what's going on in the Gnome Kingdom, and it's worse than you might imagine. The Gnome King has half of a plan. He's going to dig a tunnel under the deadly desert right into the Emerald City. But going above ground always carries with it the threat of eggs. And there's no gnome brave enough to take on those eggs. No gnome but one.
Who will volunteer to lead my host to the Emerald City?
I'd like to ask a few questions, Your Majesty.
Go ahead.
These Oz people are quite good, are they not?
As good as apple pie.
And they are happy?
Happy as the day is long.
And contented and prosperous?
Very much so.
Well, Your Majesty, I hate good people. I detest happy people. I'm opposed to anyone who is contented and prosperous. Make me your general.
Now this badass gnome is called Guff, or maybe Goof. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I'll try and call him Guff, but I might slip up. Now in the artwork, Guff looks exactly like the Gnome King, except he's wearing a sword and has a sunflower in his hair. I kind of wonder if John R. Neal was just reusing his old illustrations for the Gnome King and adding a few accessories. Now Guff has a deliciously evil idea. He wants to seek the help of other evil immortals like the gnomes. With the Gnome King's blessing, he goes out in search of them. First he visits the Whimsies, and you can see why these guys get their names. But look closely. See the two little holes in the chin? That's where they see out through. They wear big fake heads to cover up for the fact that their own heads are about the size of an orange. Now the Whimsies are big and strong and dangerous, but not very bright, so they see no reason not to help the Gnome King in exchange for getting big heads, just like the ones that they pretend to wear. But Guff isn't satisfied yet. Next he makes his way across a rippling, rolling valley to find his way to the Growlywogs. Growlywogs are emaciated muscle men, if you can even imagine that. They were of gigantic size, yet were all bone and skin and muscle, there being no meat or fat upon their bodies at all. Their powerful muscles lay just underneath their skins like bunches of tough rope, and the weakest Growlywog was so strong that he could pick up an elephant and toss it 7 miles away. Guff offers them the Ozites as slaves as a reward for their help, but the Growlywogs, they start dividing up the most famous Ozites, and the leader wants the Gnome King himself for his slave, so they're not exactly on the same level. But while these dark matters are taking place a desert away, Uncle Henry and Aunt Em are enjoying the land of Oz, but at the same time, they don't know what to do.
Every day is like Sunday now, and I can't say I like it. If only they let me do up the dishes after meals, or even sweep and dust my own rooms, I'd be a deal happier. Henry don't know what to do with himself either, and once when he stole out and fed the chickens, Billina scolded him for letting them eat between meals.
As a temporary solution, Ozma suggests that Dorothy take her aunt and uncle on a big tour of Oz, and she sends a bunch of Dorothy's other friends, like the Wizard and Ambi and Billina, with them. Their first stop on the big journey is the Wogglebug's Athletic College. Yes, the Wogglebug has finally found his calling, and it's something good that keeps him busy and out of the hair of the people of the Emerald City. It's called an athletic college because all the students do is exercise and play games all day, because miraculously, they don't have to study because they take their lessons in pill form. Ugh! You know, I've never, ever abused drugs in my life, but...
Gimme!
Oh, I forgot to mention, another member of their party is the Shaggy Man. This becomes relevant as they visit the Cut and Clips. Something else I forgot to mention is something that Mr. Baum points out in his foreword to the book. Perhaps I should admit on the title page that this book is by L. Frank Baum and his correspondence, for I have used many suggestions conveyed to me in letters from children. This may be why this book is kind of a travelogue of Dorothy and her friends going to weird places, because it's a whole bunch of towns that kids suggested that could be in Oz. And Mr. Bum chose some good ones, as we'll see. Case in point, the town of the Cuttenclips, who are living paper dolls. A little girl called Miss Cuttenclip made paper dolls that Glinda thought were so pretty, she brought her some living paper so she could be the mayor of her own little paper doll town. It's an origami city just as beautiful and delicate as the dainty China country. And nothing bad ever happens there. Unless the Shaggy Man's allergies are acting up. It's a good thing they're Ozma's friends, because that's not just awkward, that's a war crime. Next, they visit the village of Fuddlecumjig. And if I knew an obliging judge, that would be my new last name. The Fuddles of Fuddlecumjig are friendly, living jigsaw puzzles. And whenever they get startled, they scatter themselves, and you have to go find all their pieces and pick them up.
Look for a white shirt, a white apron. I'm the cook.
They didn't stay with the Fuddles that night, perhaps because they were afraid the Shaggy Man would sneeze again. So they make camp along the road, but Dorothy gets lost and then gets arrested. Arrested by spoons. This might be one of my favorite chapters of any Oz book ever, Dorothy's visit to Utensia. This kingdom of self-important cooking utensils is the most pun-laden chapter of any Oz book ever.
Why is the colander the high priest?
He's the holiest thing we have in the kingdom.
Except me. I'm the whole thing when it comes to holes.
What we need is a wireless sieve. I must speak to Marconi about it.
Nobody knows why Dorothy's been arrested in the first place. So this goes on and on. I'd like to smooth this whole thing over in a way. We're supposed to be useful to mankind. But the girl isn't mankind, she's womankind.
What do you know about it?
I am a lawyer. I am accustomed to appear at the bar.
But you're crooked, and that debars you. You may be a corking good lawyer, Mr. Pop, but I must ask you to withdraw your remarks.
Very well. I see I haven't any pull at this court.
I could go on, but let's see. Can you guess which utensil hits on Dorothy? It's the potato masher. After being released by the utensils, Dorothy visits two other towns, Bunbury and Bunnybury. Visiting Bunbury turns out to be a bad idea on an empty stomach. Bunnybury, much like the land of the Cuttenclips, is a walled city built to protect some remarkable people. In this case, bunnies! Bunnies who are all well-dressed, well-behaved, speak perfect English, eat fine foods, play instruments, and everyone's happy except the king.
What seems to be worrying your majesty? Well, it's this king business, of course. I didn't want to be king of the Bunnybury at all, and the rabbits all knew it. So they elected me to save themselves from such a dreadful fate, I suppose. And here I am, shut up in a palace when I might be free and happy.
The king of Bunnybury asks Dorothy to go to Glinda and ask her to release him and appoint someone else as king in his stead, so he can go back to his wet, dirty, worm-end-filled hole in the ground. But he keeps tacking things on to that request.
As soon as possible, I'll see Glinda and ask her to put another king in your place and send you back to the wild forest. And I'll ask you to let you keep some of your clothes and a lily chair and 1 or 2 jugglers. I don't like to trouble you with all my misery. Forget it, my dear. Forget all my foolishness.
So while Dorothy was getting into all these adventures, Guff has been getting into adventures too. In fact, he got into an adventure that a smart general would never have gotten involved with in the first place. Guff has trekked all the way to the Mountain of Fantastico to see the Phanfasms. Now, the Phanfasms are immortal, invincible, even more evil than the gnomes, and can create anything they want with their magic. So, Guff has to take a very dangerous gambit to try to win them over. What do the Phanfasms look like? We don't know. We never actually see them in their true form in this story. They can look like whatever they want.
What can you offer the Phanfasms that they have not already?
Permit me to call to your attention the exquisite joy of making the happy unhappy. Consider the pleasure of destroying innocent and harmless people.
You have answered me. reason alone, we will aid you. It is time we went into the world and brought sorrow and dismay to its people.
Oh, Guff, you have woken the sleeping giant and filled it with a terrible resolve. So now Guff trots home as fast as little legs can carry him to tell the Nome King the good news, but the Nome King, understandably, is a little hesitant.
I'm afraid, Guff, that the first and foremost may prove as dangerous to us as the Oz people. If he and his terrible band come down from the mountain, they may take the notion to conquer the gnomes.
Pah, that's a foolish idea,
Retorted Guff irritably, but he knew in his heart that the king was right. What I love about this whole plan is the gnomes' big strategy is to send the Winkies and Growlywogs and Phanphasms in the tunnel ahead of them, so the Oz people will use up all their eggs in pelting the non-gnomes with them. Brilliant! Now Dorothy and her friends are visiting the defensive settlements of Oz. These are sort of institutional towns where people with one social problem or another are sent to live, which seems a little cruel, but it seems to be the way a lot of Oz works, especially in the books not written by L. Frank Baum. First of all, they visit the Rigmarole town.
Is this Rigmarole town? Sir, if you've traveled very much, you will notice that every town differs from every other town one way or another, and so by observing the methods of the people and the way they live as well as the style of their dwelling places, ought not to be a difficult Do they all talk like that?
You might have said yes or no and answered the question.
Not here. I don't believe the rigmaroles know what yes or no means.
It is the easiest thing in the world for a person to say yes or no in a question that is asked for the purpose of getting information, satisfying curiosity,
Yeah, they speed through Rigmarole town pretty quick. Then they come to the land of the Flutterbudgets.
Save my baby! Oh, save my baby! Is it in danger?
Yes, indeed! If I should go to the house and throw my child out of the window, it would roll way down to the bottom of the hill. And if there were a lot of tigers and bears down there, they'd tear my baby to pieces.
Are there any tigers or bears in this neighborhood?
I've never heard of any, but if there were... Have you any idea of throwing your baby out the window?
None at all, but if... All your troubles are due to those ifs. If you were not a Flutterbudget, you wouldn't be worried. There's another if. Are you a Flutterbudget too? I will be if I stay here too long. Another if!
That was actually some pretty helpful advice that I've used at multiple times in my life. You know, there are a lot of times when you just get eaten up by those ifs and buts and candy and nuts and pots and pans, and I forget how that goes. Finally, they come to visit Dorothy's other friends. First up is the castle of the Tin Woodsman. The Tin Woodsman demonstrates his great compassion by talking about all the creatures that he doesn't kill.
We have some very large mosquitoes here which sing as beautifully as songbirds, but they never bite or annoy our people because they're well fed and taken care of. The reason they bite people in your country is because they're hungry. Poor things.
But it's not just a friendly visit. The Tin Woodsman has to tell them what Ozma saw in her magic picture, the tunnel that's coming closer and closer to the Emerald City, and will be finished tomorrow. How did he learn this from Ozma, you ask? It looks to me like she called him on the phone. Oz really is a different fantasy world, isn't it? On their way back to the Emerald City, they stop to pick up the Scarecrow and Jack Pumpkinhead. Jack Pumpkinhead has even prepared some pies for their arrival.
I don't indulge in pumpkin pies myself for two reasons. One reason is that were I to eat pumpkins, I would become a cannibal. And the other reason is that I never eat, not being hollow inside. Very good reasons.
So now the whole party is back in the Emerald City, and with the combined forces of Oz at their disposal, the Nome King doesn't stand a chance! Right? Have you all been worrying about this tunnel?
Yes!
Well, perhaps it is more serious than I imagined, but I haven't given the matter much thought.
This is one of the biggest of the seriously Ozma moments. Ozma doesn't want to fight. No one has the right to destroy any living creatures, however evil they may be, or to hurt them or make them unhappy. I will not fight, even to save my kingdom. The Nome King is not so particular. He intends to destroy us all and ruin our beautiful country. Because the Nome King intends to do evil is no excuse for my doing the same. Ozma also says that if Bernie Sanders doesn't get the nomination, she refuses to vote for Hillary Clinton. Boy, I hope that joke doesn't become a painful irony in the future. It's a lucky thing that they brought the Scarecrow along. He's the one that points out that the evil warriors are going to break the Earth's crust right by the Forbidden Fountain. What's the Forbidden Fountain? It's a fountain whose waters make you forget everything and become as innocent as a baby. Why has it never been mentioned before? Well, people forgot about it. All night long, the chief of the Winkies, the grand Gallipoot of the Growlywogs, the first and foremost of the Phanphasms, and the Nome King and General Guff march through the tunnel on their way to destroy Oz, coughing and choking on dust all the way. Just in case you doubted the Scarecrow's brains, he was the one who suggested to Ozma that maybe she use the magic belt to make the tunnel a little dustier and drier.
Let's hurry! I'd give half the gold on Oz for a drink of water!
The terrible moment has finally come. The crust of the earth ruptures and evil warriors pour out, and all make straight for that fountain.
Why don't you capture them? Why don't you conquer Oz, you idiots? Why do you stand there like a lot of dummies?
The Scarecrow and the Tin Woodman take the initiative and toss the Nome King into the fountain themselves.
Who are you, my dear?
My name is Ozma, and your name is Roquat.
Oh, is it?
Yes, you are king of the gnomes.
Ah, I wonder what gnomes are.
They are underground elves, and that tunnel over there is full of them. Go to your gnomes and say, "March home!" Then follow after them.
March home!
It's all over. Or is it?
Other enemies may come to Oz someday.
Ozma and her friends go to visit Glinda to ask them for a more permanent defense of Oz. Glinda has the solution.
Let us make it impossible for anyone ever to communicate with us in any way after this, by making our country invisible to all eyes but our own. I have a magic charm powerful enough to accomplish that wonderful feat. Those who fly in the air over our country will look down and see nothing at all. The land of Oz will entirely disappear from the knowledge of the rest of the world.
That's all right. You can make Oz invisible as soon as you please for all I care.
It's already invisible. I knew Ozma's wishes and performed the magic spell before you arrived.
Did you think Glinda would tell you her grand scheme if you had the slightest chance of affecting its outcome? She did it 35 minutes ago. The writer of these Oz stories has received a little note from Princess Dorothy of Oz. The note was written on a broad white feather from a stork's wing, and it said,
You will never hear anything more about Oz, because we are now cut off forever from all the rest of the world. But Toto and I will always love you and all the other children who love us. Dorothy Gale.
So good luck to Dorothy and her companions. May they live long in their invisible country and be very happy. It's almost unthinkable today. When you look at library shelves and you see the solid wall after wall of Nancy Drew and the Boxcar Children and Goosebumps, and I don't know, Trixie Belden, to think that Baum would kill off his great cash cow after just 6 books. But perhaps that's indicative of how special it was to him. Think of it, if you had created the Land of Oz, would you even believe it? When a miracle like that happens to you, you don't want to take the miracle away. You don't want it to just become your day job. Of all the millions of little children who loved the Land of Oz, I don't think any of them loved it as much as his own royal historian did. But the truth is that, in a way, he never did stop writing Land of Oz books. His next 2 big fantasy novels, that he wrote under his own name and not a pseudonym because he wrote like crazy, were Sea Fairies and Sky Island. These books feature 2 new characters, Tiny Trot and Captain Bill. Trot and Captain Bill got their own fans, but everyone knew that it was just the Oz books with the serial numbers scratched off. And soon enough, the disguise fell away when in the book The Scarecrow of Oz, Trot and Captain Bill became part of the Oz family for good. Nothing can put an end to the Land of Oz, except maybe copyright trolling, which is why it's so nice that the Land of Oz is in the public domain. In a way, that invisibility cloak around Oz is gone forever, because now anyone can go to Oz and write their own adventures. Hope you're hungry. I don't eat hungry readers myself, because then I'd be a cannibal.
If you'd like to read The Emerald City of Oz yourself, great! There's lots of places online to do it, but I recommend archive.org or gutenberg.org. Or why not get your own real-life, super incredible, awesome reproduction from Books of Wonder?